Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Learn from the Pros. If you're new here, my name is Reds, aka Jason Reynolds, and I host this program. And this actually is going to be our last one for a while, because we've been doing this for a minute now, and we're gonna take a little bit of a break. For those who are subscribed though to my Patreon, and if you haven't yet done so, check it out at patreon.com/Jason Reynolds Pro Audio. We're gonna be hosting some Zoom hangouts for our subscribers, where you'll get a chance to interact directly with some of my friends in the industry. So we're moving to more of a targeted setup for the Learn from the Pros. So yeah, welcome, thanks for joining today. And like I said, if you haven't already done so, subscribe. Check out my website, jasonreynoldsproaudio.com, and also my Patreon page, patreon.com/jasonreynoldsproaudio. So without further ado, the last time we tried to do a Learn from the Pros, we were having some technical challenges with Wirecast. So I'm hoping I have it all sorted out today so we don't have the same problems. But let me go ahead and get our guest in for today. Let's bring him up here on the screen. My guest for today is the one and only Marlon John. Marlon, thanks for taking the time to do this.
Yes, man. Nice to be here.
Yeah, so we're gonna, as usual, just talk a little bit about your journey and how you got into the industry. And for those who are watching for the first time, we tend to try and focus on more of the intangibles that people who are working in the entertainment industry, specifically audio engineers, lighting designers, technical production crew, the intangibles that allow them to get to where they've got to, and that keep them at that level. So we don't necessarily focus on faders and knobs, but more so the stuff behind the scenes, because there's tons of websites out there where you can learn the fader and knobs part, right? So we try to focus on the intangibles. So for those watching, if you have questions for Marlon as we go through, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll do our best to take as many questions as possible. So we'll jump right in. Marlon, why don't you introduce yourself to the viewers? Tell them who you are, who you work for, what you were doing prior to COVID, because right now all of us are sitting at home. But so as of 4 months ago, this is like a 4 months delayed conversation, right?
Yes, sir. Alright. Name is again Marlon John, originally from Trinidad. I started doing sound in like 1986, but that was way back then. I was with a band called Strong Ambition from Trinidad. It was just like a roadie. It was a hobby of mine of being around. My brother was a drummer and always invited me to come around while they practice and stuff. And went down there, met some of the guys who on the road crew, and they keep telling me about how they're going around and traveling to here and going doing shows and all of this stuff. So, that was me being inquisitive about it, trying to know what it's about. And then once I started going around the band and started seeing what they do, I started getting a likeness for it. So at that point in time, there was no space in the crew. So basically, I was volunteering my service to be a roadie.
Right.
And as a roadie, we just go lift box, set up system, stay at the party. Next show, next morning, you go and bring on the system and back to the warehouse. So that was my whole starting in the sound business. And the more I go along, I getting a like for the business, start liking the technical aspect of it. So I started hanging around the technical crew now. Showed me how to wire stage, how to mic up drum kits, and the various aspects of the industry. And from that, I moved from a roadie to being on the technical crew now, where I stopped lifting the boxes and started wiring on this sound system, which was a totally different aspect of the whole thing. It's basically, like trying to learn this and be part of it also is two different things. Like so, the guys was like, guy, you gotta take your time, you gotta know, you know, to troubleshoot stuff and you know do all behind the scenes stuff of learning the gear.
Right.
So I went from that to actually learn how to mix. So I started doing learn how to mix monitors. So I went from a roadie to a technical crew guy to the engineer of the band eventually over a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So um, so from there, you know, that's when the whole light was open to me now. Like, okay, this could be a career
Right.
because now we started traveling, we started seeing, and started seeing the money we was making. So I
Mm-hmm.
started looking at the career now of this is what I want to do in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So about 1991, 1992, that's when we started touring. I started meeting other people, meeting other engineers, traveling the world, and that's when they started telling me about the whole touring aspect of the U.S. and of the world, and that's when I started doing more research. So,
Mm-hmm.
what do you call? So that was my introduction. That's where I started.
Mm-hmm.
From there, when I moved to the U.S. Well, before that, I worked with a lot of the other bands in Trinidad, the Marshall Montano, the Bunch of
Mm-hmm.
Allen, the Mighty Sparrow. Most of the top acts from Trinidad and Tobago I worked with because
Mm-hmm.
that was that's what my come up.
Mm-hmm.
Like Marshall Montano, I was his ready second engineer, which you say I spoiled him why everything is so loud on stage. You could blame me for that.
So you are the man
Yeah,
responsible for the 120 dB stage.
yeah, yeah. It's yes, I am. In Trinidad, they told me, I'm the one responsible for that. But as a monitor engineer, I learned that it's not what you like; it's what the artist that's what you're being paid for.
Right.
So
Right.
basically, for me, if you want 110, I got to find a way of getting to 110 without no feedback.
Right. Right.
You know,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so that was my job of getting there. And once it got there, it got to the ridiculous part. Now, like, okay, now even I can't be on that stage anymore because I
Right.
can't listen to anything 110.
Right. No, definitely, definitely. So I guess I want to shout out some folks that I see popping up in the comments. Some people watching Danny Maestro from Toronto. You may know this guy Nigel Brizan.
Yes, that's,
And Veer Daniram is here too.
oh
They're
man,
heckling in the chat on YouTube already.
oh
Um,
my lord.
so I want to know if you're also the person responsible for the mic in the subwoofer on Marshall Montana's stage. That was a job at a good
No,
friend of mine.
no, definitely not.
Okay.
Definitely not.
All
I
right.
wouldn't go
So
that far.
that's funny. So talk to me about like the early days. What did you focus on in terms of learning and what was your approach to learning? Once you figured out that this thing could be a career, what was your focus in those early days?
Well, in the early days, there was this wise old guy that he always told me about the reading knowledge, right?
Right.
He said you might read it today, you might not understand today, but it will come. You'll be able to use it down the road.
Right.
So I used to read a lot of mixed magazine, lifestyle magazine, pro magazine, a lot of books, audio engineering books, right?
Right.
Some of them I read but never understand them.
Uh-huh.
But the further I go along in my career, like all these stuff comes in place now, you know.
Right.
So that was my biggest tool is not knowledge, knowing the equipment, knowing the gear, know how to use it, right? And once you know that, the practical part is to me is secondary.
Right.
Knowledge is always you have to know how to use a gear first before you can really apply it in any field.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
because
And I find
I
I
can.
find I find that so interesting because there's a lot of people who use gear nowadays that don't necessarily know how the gear is designed to work. I think Veer was the one who kind of
Right.
brought that up, even with plugins that different types of compressors, for example, and how they
Yep.
affect, let's say, a vocal if you're on a noisy stage. If you don't really
Yep.
understand, if you've
Yep.
never really read and understood how a specific type of compressor is designed to work, then you may not end up with the
Right.
result that you're looking for. So I find that very interesting. What were the opportunities like for you as a relatively new engineer in the business, in terms of, because a lot of people who watch, let's say, from the Caribbean, they might not necessarily have access to every different type of console, but now that you get in with a band and you start to travel and you see more, what were those opportunities like for you in the early days? Did you have a lot of opportunities to get hands-on practice on gear?
No. Back in the days, hands-on practice was, and that was never there. Like, and that's why I say reading was most, most important tool, because basically we couldn't go to a shop and say, well, give me some time on a console, or
Right.
go to a sound company and say, I'm going to go prep my gear, but in the meantime I'm going to be learning the console. We never had those opportunities. We go to a show, we might have a sound check, we may not have a sound check. And back in the days when I was working with Sound Revolution and the Marshalls and stuff, sound check was a luxury,
Right.
right? Because you're going to festival or shows that basically you're going in, you know, hot. There is
Right.
no go and load a file and you have a preset for a show. Is I can remember my first time going to Toronto, and we was working with this some company in Rocky Mountain Sounds from Toronto, Mississauga,
Uh-huh.
and they had the Soundcraft 400. Never been in it in my life. Now
Right.
this is show day. I have to go do a sound check and a show on a console that I don't even know. But my philosophy about sound and gear, everything somewhat aligned. If you
Uh-huh.
know, to me, signal flow of
Right.
a console,
Right.
you practically go on any console and use it, because you must know where the gain is, which the head amp, where your compressors, your EQ, your fader, everything leads back to either a subgroup it out or you go straight to the master bus. So basically, if you study the principle of sound and
Uh-huh.
you study and you know signal flow, for me, going on a console is basically give me 5 minutes for this console. If you know it, show me where the stuff I need to work
Mm-hmm.
and where how can I access it. Then basically, I could mixing is secondary to
Right.
me after that.
Right.
So that was my approach back in the early days of not having access to consoles.
Right. And do you find, I don't know if this is just kind of my observation, but do you find now that a lot of younger engineers who have sort of grown up in the digital domain don't really understand signal flow, and as such, I find, because you have so much flexibility now, right? Like you're on an analog desk, your insert point is your insert point, right? But now you get on
Yep.
like a digital console, and so some guys don't necessarily understand the difference between, let's say, inserting dynamics pre EQ or post EQ, and what
Right.
what
Right.
what impact that will have on the signal that they're trying to process. Do you find that that's less of a focus nowadays in the digital world, learning stuff like signal flow and things like patching and that kind of stuff, that's such important fundamentals to what we do?
I think it is. I think it is because if you ask 25% of the engineer or more
Uh-huh.
to go on a chart and outline the signal flow, they might know what I'm talking about,
Right.
because it was never taught. When I started, I didn't know about signal flow.
Right. Right.
You asked me about signal flow. What signal flow? You know,
Right.
because a lot of guys now they might maybe they come out in school, came through the club scene or whatever. They never get the time to go behind the scenes and know how stuff works. And that's always something I liked about. And I didn't really understand it until I started working with this company in Toronto. And I was already traveling like mixing shows because I met them mixing and eventually I started working for them. And my first like 6 months to a year, I wasn't allowed to go on a show. I wasn't allowed to mix. I wasn't allowed to do anything. They broke me back down, and it made me see how little I knew because they started teaching me signal flow, patching, troubleshooting, all the behind the scenes stuff, how compressors work properly and all this stuff. And I realized back then I thought I was a way ahead of the curve, but I wasn't because all the stuff behind the scene I didn't know the stuff how to set stuff up properly, how to operate it properly, how to apply it in different institutions properly. I didn't know until I started working in the shop and they started teaching me those stuff.
Right.
And that a lot of the guys who's mixing out here, they might understand that they all want to be engineers, but are you just a feeder pusher,
Right.
or are you somebody who understand the full scope of engineering?
Right. Absolutely. That's I what I find interesting in that, and what I'd like to highlight for our viewers in that conversation, um, is the fact that even though you were already traveling and mixing and touring, you were still in a position of a willingness to learn because
Yep.
you realized that um, you didn't know everything, and I think for folks watching, and we've had, it's funny how all the guests that we have kind of highlight the same things, and I try to point that out to our viewers that in a lot of cases, the intangibles that we talk about are the same, even though you have 15 or 20 or 30 different engineers, but because they're at that highest level, some of those intangibles are the same. And that part of that is the willingness to learn. And I think nowadays it's even more so, what's the word I'm looking for? More so important to engineers in the industry now because technology is so radically changing. I mean, back in the analog days, a console is a console, right? Most are laid out the
Yep.
same. You got gain at the top, and then filters, and then EQ, then your aux send
EQ.
section,
Yep.
and then you're
Yep.
down to your fader, right? Whereas
Yep.
nowadays, you'd have a digital console today that you know very well, and a year from now, another one might come out that's completely different. And
Yep.
you have to have that willingness to learn and stay relevant. So tell me a little bit about some ways that you stay relevant, because you're working at that, and you haven't gotten into yet what you're doing currently and who you work for currently. But I know you have an
Yeah.
impressive resume, and we'll jump into that. But what are some of the ways that you stay relevant and current as an engineer at that highest level?
Staying current is basically, for me, still as normal. Even during now, the COVID time, I'm always online looking at interviews with different engineers, listening to stuff that they do and how it will attain to me in my, you know, how I'll apply it in my next job or my next show is coming on. Right. So basically that, and it's funny, it's just this morning me and everybody was talking about that, and he told me like since the COVID start, he had basically shut down the whole songs out of his head. Right? And I told him you can't do that
Right.
because you have to stay relevant to what's going on because tomorrow when the stuff start back up, you have to be still on your A game.
Right.
So for
Absolutely.
me, I have recordings of shows that I had tracked out. So sometimes I sit on my computer and just play around with the different EQs of shows on different drum sets and stuff, just to stay relevant. And I don't. I don't have a setup like you. I wish I had something like that in a
Yeah, I'm fortunate. I'm really fortunate. I can't even take
you know.
credit, to be honest.
You know, I'm still waiting Matt to get back to me. I spoke to him about it already. He just
Right.
hasn't really reached
Yeah.
back out to me as yet.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah. So for me, it's that staying relevant basically is just always staying in tune to what's going on.
Right.
Be it you have webinars or be it you at home. And for me, I say, I pull up sessions, a track session on my computer, and
Right.
just play around. You know. Um, so we're gonna fast forward to like who I working with now.
Hmm.
Resume goes from Neo, Nicki Minaj, Prince, Fantasia, Migos. I worked with Drake for a period of time.
Uh-huh.
It's too much to really list out. At current, my last tour I was doing Jaden Smith and
Uh-huh.
Willow Smith on we did the last tour in December, which was basically I've been working with Jaden for a bit. Willow was a new client of mine through that. Before
Uh-huh.
that, I was working with Fergie.
Okay.
I worked with
Nice.
Fergie for like 2 years prior to that, and between that, still worked for Fantasia, um, Sierra. All these people that's some of my clients that I work with.
Nice. I
Yeah.
um I spoke a few days ago on a Zoom call for a group of engineers regarding diversity in the industry, in the live
Hmm.
sound industry. They asked me to be a part of it and to be one of the contributors to this Zoom call, and they were
Hmm.
I mean, obviously, the co-founders of soundgirls.org was on it, and they're doing
Hmm.
fantastic work in
Hmm.
in the industry as it relates to representing, advocating, and mentoring other women who want to get into the industry, which I think is absolutely
Right.
fantastic and needed.
Yep.
But one of the things I raised on that call is the microaggression and that we face as engineers from the Caribbean,
Yep.
which I find so interesting. And I made the comment that I'm not quite sure why people still think that that's okay, because some of the best engineers in the game right now and some of the guys operating at that highest level are from the Caribbean, and not just even just on the end. I know some have, like Sean Sturge has transitioned more into the account rep side of things, but is
Yep.
is more than just an account rep. Is VP now at Eighth Day, and
Hmm.
and guys that have gone on to do some incredible things. And to be very honest, some of my favorite front of house engineers and the best front of house engineers I've heard mix shows are from the Caribbean. One of them being my good friend Veer. I say it all the time, privately and publicly, that I've never heard anybody mix quite like him. When he mixes the Marleys, it's unreal. Dean
Right.
Pond, Nigel Brazan, and then now guys like us, monitor engineers. Some of the monitor engineers operating at that highest level are of Caribbean background. Have you experienced some of that microaggression personally, where you find that whether it's a production company owner or a production manager that you're advancing with, or just some idiot who feels that because you're from the Caribbean, you need to prove something almost?
Yes, I have. I have that. And to me, in the early days when I was trying to get into the business, I was faced with a lot of that. It's like, oh, you're from Trinidad. What do you know about this music? What do you? And as a Trinidadian, as a black man, I felt offended about that because, as you said, some of the best engineers are from Trinidad or from the Caribbean. The reason, point being, is that we was so exposed to different genre of music, right? So from the Caribbean or from Trinidad, we was soca, but we play reggae, we listen like soft rock, and we was exposed to all those different genres of music, right? So for us, it was easy to translate to any other artist, like basically because our bands, when we go out, like okay, Bryson working for Kes now. When Kes play, he plays soca, he play hip hop, he
Right,
play reggae, he play
right,
all these different genre of music. and you know how to mix this music,
Right.
right? And so basically, you know, to me, it was a slap in the face until I could prove myself to them. And the person who helped me with that or put me in the forefront of that person named Sean Sturge.
Right.
For history, Sean and I grew up together. Sean grew up under me as a son person,
Right.
right? But look where he is now,
Right.
right? And that is the person I always look up to as a person in the industry because he is that good of a sound engineer that if I have a problem, I call him.
Right.
But back to the original point, yes, I have been faced with those limitations of people looking at me as a black man from the Caribbean, you know, and not being able to respect my talent as an
Right.
engineer.
Right. And do you do you? Because I know for some of us, I know Vera and I have had this conversation a lot about just I tell people all the time I don't put I stopped pushing faders for money a long time ago. For me now it's more so leaving legacy and doing things to create impact and hopefully making it easier for the next generation of guys coming out of the Caribbean to 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 be able to one believe that they are on they're able to get into this highest level of touring. But for me, I kind of left pop music behind and sort of elected to just be where I was comfortable, which is reggae, and ended up working with
Mhm.
Shaggy and then the Marleys and now pop reggae with Magic. But for the most part, I was like, it just got really tiring. Do you feel now that even though you've proven yourself and your name is well known in the industry and you work for some of the biggest players, do you still sort of carry that chip on your shoulder like I got something to prove and every time you step behind a console because I feel like for us, for me anyway, I can speak for me, it makes it even better because no show I take for granted because I feel like every single time I got something to prove and I got to mix somebody under the table somewhere, right? So is that a thing for you, or are you kind of just at the stage now where it just doesn't even factor into your thought process?
Before it was no, 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 you know, and the person who changed my mind towards that was basically Sean. Before I used to be, I have to prove it, I have to make this right, I have to do this, and I have to do that. I need to tell me, don't beat yourself over it. You know, just do the best that you can do. Right. So I'm basically now not I'm comfortable.
Hmm.
I'm just basically sure that every time I go, I know what I'm going to do.
Right.
Right. And once I have the artist's trust that when he or she stepped on stage, that they are right and they're comfortable, then my job is done.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Talk a little bit about your process. So I always tell folks that process is what makes something consistent, right? When you have a solid process that you can repeat, then every show becomes just a repetition of that process. So take me through a little bit of your process from you get a call, so and so has a tour coming up, let's say a Drake or what's that process look like for you in terms of specking the right gear for the job? How much I know sometimes front of house engineers may have a little bit more say in terms of mic selection and that kind of stuff. But tell me how much do you put into that preparation process, and then take me through rehearsals into now your first show.
So basically, from the time I receive confirmation that I'm doing the tour, or or the show, my process of firstly is who's the front house engineer. That's the first person I would reach out to. You know, especially if that engineer has been working with the act before. So my thing is basically reach out to them, get a copy of their gear list of what they have spec, right? Then I will review that. Then I will add what I would need to do my job. So basically, he's doing front of house, I will do monitors. He will have, preferential on the microphones and all that stuff. Because
Right.
that's his call. I will add in what I need for me to do for me to work comfortable on stage. So I will spec my console. For me, I really use outboard gear. I use everything internally
Right.
because to me, using outboard gear, especially in a monitoring situation, unless everything is dialed in properly, there's one less thing to worry about
Absolutely.
going down, right? So basically, I keep everything on the console, right? So once I've already put that together with the engineer, our first rehearsal day is meeting with the production with the the PM. I meet with him, and then meet with the band leader, musical director, and talk to him with the music. He might know exactly what the artist wants to hear, basically. So I get a reference of what the artist are accustomed hearing in his or her mix. So that's
Right.
my starting point. Um, and what I will do, I will create a quick sketch mix of what he tells me.
Right.
Right? Just so basically, in case that artist walk in the any on any given day, first day, second day, third day, I have a mix already set and preset for them, which I could adjust down the road.
Right.
As we go along for rehearsal, we basically now we start putting stuff together. Um, Gotta make sure the consoles, if we're using digital and we're on a loop, make sure we all on a loop. Make sure all my snapshots are in, all
Right.
my songs are labeled. So basically, um, once we go as we progress, for me at that point in time is minor changes I'm making to all my snapshots as we go along.
Right.
So basically, once the artist comes in, no matter when they come in, my job for there from there on is fine tuning my mix, which
Right.
I sometimes do before that because I record almost every rehearsal I do. I try to have all my stuff tracked out. So I normally go in some of them on mornings before the band gets there, and I will just play back stuff and tighten up like drum mixes, my gates, and my compression to make sure everything is seamless and everything is just working as it's supposed to.
Right.
So by the time the artist comes in, we almost in show mode.
Gotcha.
You know, I do a lot of work with my programming guy, with the Pro Tools guy, because for me, when on tour, I run everything through time code. All my
Right.
snapshots work off a time code. So basically, I work a lot of time with my Pro Tools guy. So basically, when he fired his snapshot, when he fired his songs, my consoles are reading it, and the changes are taking place as it's supposed to be
Right.
taken. So that's where my work becomes really, really. That's the most work I do. Basically, is making sure I'm synced with my playback guy, and once that is synced, my job becomes easily after. I could
Right. It's
just
smooth
sit
sailing.
back
You
and
can
relax.
have a
Yes.
have a Johnny Walker while the show is going
Oh
on,
yeah,
because
yeah. As as
everything
I
is
told
synced.
people, as I told people, this is my job on some of the tours. Once I finish my rehearsal, and we have the first show day. After that, is setting my console up, check my lines, make sure everything's working. See showtime, fire the first scene. After the first scene, okay, I'm good.
Yeah. Pro Tools takes over.
Yep.
So, what's mainly are you on a digital most of the time? Is that your console of choice these days?
Yes. Yes. My console of choice is digital.
Yeah, give it up from a rich friend, because I'm sure you're on a SD7 nine times out of ten.
No,
Of
no, no,
most
no, no.
what?
I have, Um, SD7 to me back then to me was too much problematic far as
Okay,
back in the day. So,
right.
we used to go and do shows with that SD7 and basically take one of the engines out.
Oh wow. Well, yeah, that
Yeah.
that whole mirroring thing. I had to teach myself how to set up mirroring For Veer for the last Kaya Fest, he was using a 7 at front of house and had it mirroring with waves and everything, and man, that was a
Yeah,
that was an
yeah.
experience.
The last time I worked at an SD7, I said that was the end of it. Um, we were in Croatia doing a Will Smith show,
Uh-huh.
and we sound checked. Everything went fine. Everything was good. We had a band on. We left. We went back to the hotel, and we came back to the show. And we was coming back to the show, and to the bottom of the step before I reached on the stage,
Hmm.
the my tech is looking at me, and he's just shaking his head.
Oh boy.
And he's shaking his head, and he's like, "Okay, what happened?" Walked on stage, and one side of the side I had my whole session is on
Yeah.
crashed.
Oh boy.
Called digital, called this one, and then this was like an hour before show, you
Jeez.
know. So fired up my console, reload the show. A side went down, A engine went down. So I said, all right, I'm gonna just push everything to the B engine. But when I push everything to the B engine, is because all my plugins stayed on the A engine,
Oh boy.
right? Because it wasn't mirror prop. So
Yeah.
now I'm getting frustrated because my PM now is like on my back. Are we gonna be
Right.
doing a show? Are we gonna be doing a show? And I said, you know what? Enough of this. I remember this. Went behind the desk, pulled the A engine on, fire the
Yeah.
B engine, moved the silver over to the B engine, load my show. Show went down.
Perfect.
After that, SD7 was not for me.
Any other close calls like that? Does that happen often, or thankfully you've been able to get away with just being a comfortable ride?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Everything was a comfortable ride. I never had any problems. I work mostly on the SD10 and the SD5s.
Yep.
Those are my two console, and to me, they're very sturdy. I never had any problems with it, and knock on wood that I don't have any in the future.
Yeah. You gotta get on one of these guys soon.
Which one?
This is the Quantum 338 I have in my
You didn't have to, you ain't got to put it out there like that, man.
yeah. No, shout out to Gear Audio, who is the Canadian distributor of Digico. They when COVID started, I kind of reached out. I do a lot of training for them, so they've been great to me. They also do Meyer Sound, so the Amis that I have is also courtesy of them. So I actually just did a Clang masterclass yesterday because I've
Right.
been using Clang since 2018. I've been using Clang out with Stephen Marley,
Nice.
so um, been been learning that piece of equipment, so I kind of know it well. But yeah, it talk about it. It's funny because I've had like so many Wave servers give trouble. Like Waves is such a
Yep.
thing that I'm trying to get away from, and so this mustard processing and the spice rack that's on the quantum stuff kind of because especially as monitor engineers too, I tell people a lot of times I try not to mess around with stuff like Waves and outboard gear for the same reason. It's
Yep.
just one less thing that what I
Yep.
mean, and sometimes it's really a question of the cost benefit too, because like I don't know if people really notice. You have
Mm-hmm.
maybe in the audience. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Front of house guys can speak for themselves, but I don't know. Like a great in-ear mix is a great in-ear mix, regardless of whether or
Exactly.
not you're using waves or not. So as long as it sounds good and the artist is comfortable,
Yeah.
who really cares
You
if you're
know,
using?
I
Yeah.
use out of my whole Wave package, I maybe use about three plugins.
What are
You know,
those three?
I use the CLE6 for my drums.
Yeah.
I use the BSS, the 902 for the compressor,
Yeah.
right? And depending on my artist of the vocal range or what they do, I might use a CLE2
Right.
compressor.
Right.
After that, that's it.
Yeah.
Because I would look at some people at rack and I see they like bunches of waves
Yeah.
EQs, like wave plugins is like what you doing?
Right. I
What
see
what you
pictures. I see pictures sometimes on Instagram with like you see like a rack on multi rack with like six, seven
yeah.
plugins in one rack, and I'm wondering if they're probably trying to get like a Waves deal or something. So they're showing that they're
It's
I don't
I
know.
don't know. You know, some people want to do pre-bus compression and this compression and that is like for what? Because what do you do now? Like, what are you doing? You're just changing the whole sound of what's deriving off stage. You know,
Right.
like just a quick example. I can remember when I was working for Prince, you know, with Prince. We went in there, we went in there with the whole what we're gonna do and stuff. And we had one console to work on. There was at that time there was no monitor console in front of us. It was only a front of house console. So we got to do monitor from front of house.
Wow.
You know. So basically, the first day we went in, he said, "All right, I want to hear you all mix the whole thing." So we went. It was myself and Demetrius. Right. So we went in tuning drums, tuning kick drum, tuning snare, whatever. And about 5 minutes after that, he walked outside and stopped everything. You look at it, you see that's your kick drum. So you look at we didn't even answer, we just looked at him and he said, all right, stop. So you see flat knock the console. So we flat knock the console, zero back everything. And he brought us on stage. He said, listen to this kick drum on stage. And he said, what you did it sound anything like this? You know. So we went back outside, put on the PA, kick drum. See, if you heard the kick drum on stage, right? Listen to the kick drum again. Is it something the same? No? Okay. So he made us, firstly, re-EQ, flatten the PA, re-EQ the PA. Then he
Wow.
came back 5 minutes after. And all he did is just push the kick drum fader. And it's like the whole system changed,
Right.
right? And his philosophy was basically, I'm not paying you to mix a battle, mix what comes stage. I'm paying you to maintain it,
Wow.
right? So if something sounds good that comes off stage, it's supposed to sound the same way in the house.
Right.
You know, it has some guys who spend 10 minutes to EQ a kick drum, and it still doesn't sound nothing close to what's on stage. So if you get
Right.
it, if it's right at the source, it's
Right.
supposed to be right in the speaker, and that's
Right.
his all. That's always his. If it's one thing I took away from working with him for the time I worked with him, is basically listen to what's on stage and try and replicate it. Don't try to change it.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that experience. Is that an intimidating experience having an artist that is that um, intricate in their approach? Because I mean, by now everybody would have heard multiple stories about Prince and just how intricate his approach to sound is and music. I mean, one of the musical geniuses of our
Yep.
time for sure. Um, what was that experience like? What was the energy of that conversation like? And have you had another artist that's even close to that?
Uh, at first, it was very intimidating because I got a call several times to work for him, and I turned it down by just hearing the stories of what people were saying about working with him, of how he got fired, of how he is. And I took the challenge because, you know, a day Sean called me and said, yeah, you need to go do this gig. Trust me, you need to. If you want to learn anything more in this industry, go work for this guy because Sean used to work for him before.
Right.
So the first day going in, it was really intimidating because we was told before we get there, we got to download this CD, right, and listen to it. And it wasn't his music; it was a recording of Queen in Montreal,
Wow.
right. So we went in the first day and we walked in the room and he walked out. So we say, all right, so who's my son guys? Raised our hand. He said, "All right, follow us, follow me." So we went to one of his smaller studios.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't ask us no names or nothing. He asked nothing. He said, "All right, we did get a chance to listen to the record that you guys need to listen." He said, "Yes." So he put it on one more time in the studio. He said, "See this? This is one I mix the song like.
Wow.
If it sound like that, we'll be good." So I looked at the next guy and you know, we just stood still because there's no way you can replicate
You're
that
probably
mix
like,
because
oh crap, what do we get ourselves into?
exactly right.
Oh man.
Anyhow, we said we're gonna give it our best try. So we
Right.
went out the first day, and he was a guy he liked to teach also. So even though if you don't know
That's
something,
amazing.
he will teach you, and that's what one thing he always did us. He taught us stuff. He bring us in Studio B and showed us stuff that how we record stuff and how we make stuff because he recorded most all his stuff and
Right.
and and mixed it most of his
Right.
stuff. So
Right.
he practically like taught us how he wanted his stuff to sound,
That's
which he
amazing.
knew
Yeah.
because he was a guy who will be on stage and he will call out every delay that needs to be on the vocal to the
Right.
millisecond, to the
Oh wow.
feedback time. He would call it out during the song. He'll be singing and say, all right, 246, like, so, and you had to be paying attention at that time because he would tell it to you and he will listen for it because what he does, he listen to the slapback
Right. Right.
of the house,
That's insane.
right? And then he takes every rehearsal need to be recorded. So he records every rehearsal. And sometime in the morning when we get in, he will send for us one time, bring us in the studio and play back the rehearsal from the night before. And then he will point out stuff in the mix that need to be fixed.
Wow.
So basically it was always, and the thing about him, everything for him was analog. There was no digital anything,
Right.
you know. The second day of rehearsal, our job was to take pictures of the console. So you get your phone out or you get your iPad and you got to take a snapshot of all section of the console.
Right.
And that is for if one day he come back and he say, okay, flatten back zero by the console. So there is no recall. So you have
Right.
to
Right.
re-EQ back everything, flatten everything back, and then we will start back over. And if you find that mix is not something the way it was before, you say, all right, let's go back to where it was before. So he
Right.
will stop rehearsal, send the band off
Jeez.
for lunch, whatever, and then we gotta, reset all the knobs to where it was supposed to be, and
Right.
then we'll go from there, you know. But to me, working for him was a great experience,
Right. Right.
and a learning experience. If you had, once you had the patience to listen to what he was saying and don't think that you know it all and you can learn from him,
Right.
he was a great teacher.
Amazing.
And that's what I took away from him. He's a great
Right.
teacher, and he taught me a lot.
That's incredible, man. I've never. I mean, probably the closest to that in terms of just um, musical awareness in terms of artists that I've worked with is quite likely Stephen Marley,
Hmm.
because he's a producer and Veer will tell you stories of walking into his studio, here him working on music,
Hmm.
and your jaw drops to the floor because he gets such incredible sounds out of his SSL desk. He might not know how to
Right.
get behind the desk and do what we do, but definitely knows exactly, and tone of course is a big thing for him,
Yep.
and I know exactly what you're saying when you say you learn a lot, because my first tour with Steven in 2018, I learned more about what I do as a monitor engineer than ever before, and I'd been doing it for so many years. So you get into a
Yep.
situation where you get hired because of your skill set, and you think you know a lot, and then you get into a
Yep.
situation where there's
Yep.
still more
Yep.
to learn, and that's incredible, man. It's such an
Yeah.
incredible story. Um, do you? I might slap our Caribbean countries on the wrist a little bit when it comes to folks like yourself who have been there and done it. Do you get contacted to give back a little bit at home? Like, do you do a lot of teaching and stuff? And do you because I feel like that's what's missing in a lot of cases with the Caribbean now, and I can speak about Jamaica because that's where I'm from. But um, we don't necessarily we have a lot of people of Jamaican descent that are out there doing it big and doing it at the highest level, but we never get the opportunity to give back or teach, or and a lot of times ego plays a part of that. It is what it is. What's that situation been like for you? Are Do you get an opportunity to maybe give back to some of the upcoming guys now who want to get to the level of a Marlon John?
I do, and I always think that's something that we all need to do. And I feel for me, I like to pass on knowledge. I love that. You know, in the early 2000 and in 2004, um, I did teach for like 2 years like a some engineering class in Trinidad
Hmm.
with myself and Frank Agarek from Rentown. I did that a few years ago. This guy named Victor Donovan from Trinidad also called. He brought me back home because they had now bought a profile console,
Hmm.
and he wanted me to come and teach the guys how to use it. So I went down there for a weekend, and it was really good. Educating the guys how to use the console, to get it up, set it up, and stuff. So I think it's something that you know the Caribbean don't take advantage of because they will faster can call somebody else than calling your own back to the country to come
Right,
and teach. And
right,
that's why myself and Brisbane are that close because we share a lot of knowledge between us.
right,
We are the same age, we come at the same time. So we could sit down and talk about sound and how we would like to how I help him something with his stuff
right.
and I will call them and they'll say, yo, this is what's going on. You need to do this, we need to do that. And, I think it's something that we all need to look into and maybe the country, but the Caribbean on the whole need to, take advantage of our, experience out here.
Right, because I feel like, man, and it's not even, leave me out of it for a second. I think guys like yourself, Sean Sturge, the really and truly, if the government of Trinidad
Hmm.
cares about the arts, man, they should be
Hmm.
putting on biannual or 3 times a year. They should have workshops with you guys and pay you top dollar to do it too. Not expect you to do it just because you're Trinidadian. They should invest. So if anybody's watching
Well,
this from Trinidad, from the government of Trinidad, Jamaica, anywhere else in the Caribbean, you got people, invest and bring your
uh,
people in.
let me put your boy on blast. We're going to put him in one person on blast, right? We're gonna put Nigel Brisson on blast.
Or we're going to put him on. Let's put him on blast. Cause you just
Yes.
said to me that I was gonna take a jab at Brizan, but I elected not to. But since we're gonna put him on blast, you just said that you and Brizan are the same age. I want to know how
Yes.
he looks so old.
Oh my God! No, no,
Sorry,
no,
Brizan. I had to. I had to. I had to. Yeah.
yeah, as we say, like anything to do with audio and government
Mm.
in Trinidad, you call Nigel Brisson. He's the man, the minister of sound in
All
Trinidad.
right.
Anything to
All
do
right.
with,
All right.
you
Well,
know.
the cool thing, I want to publicly appreciate Brizan for making the link between us and introducing us because we are trying to do some stuff for the Caribbean. We are working on Audio Maniacs Live. I actually have been
Mhm.
speaking to him where we want to do live mixing seminars
Right.
with high end gear. So if we have to,
Hmm.
I know Dean mixes on an S6L. So if we gotta bring an S6L in, we want to make sure that guys are comfortable in their habitat and do
Right.
um, whether it be a 2 or 3 day event, and definitely would love to have yourself, Sean. There are others too. There's guys like
Hmm.
Courtney Taylor,
Yeah.
who's from the Caribbean. So many guys,
Yeah.
and Nigel has mentioned a bunch of names to me from Trinidad who I haven't necessarily met in person yet, but we definitely want to get this thing going because the thing is in the Caribbean, and I boast about Caribbean talent all the time, because we have such raw talent. Now
Right.
it's what can we do to develop that into beyond just being raw talent, and industrialize our music, because I think that's where other areas in the world have left us behind. If you look
Yep.
at reggae music and how Caucasian people have taken on our own music and commercialized it
For
and
real.
left us behind
For
in many
real.
cases.
For real.
You have bands like Revolution that are touring
Yeah.
playing reggae and they're selling out
Reggae.
amphitheaters, and our biggest artist from Jamaica can't even sell out a Fillmore. So
Right.
we
Right.
have to seriously stop and look at the structure of what we're doing, and I think the good thing. I mean, obviously, I have a little bit of opinions, but as it relates to even soca music is kind of on that verge of making that real good push into the international space. Um, I encourage y'all not to make some of the mistakes we've made in reggae, because we're playing catch up right now, and that's just the truth. You know what I mean? We have no. I was talking to a friend of mine, and there's no real structure for an engineer to move through the paces as you have in North America, for example, because you talked in the beginning a little bit about getting with a production company and learning certain things, and then from that
Hmm.
point, that production company may put you on gigs where you may meet an artist and then you get called to do
Hmm.
something else. Whereas in
Right.
the Caribbean, it's still just a man get a bus. You know what I mean? He,
Yep.
he kind of teach
Yep.
himself, and one name just get a
Yep.
bus, and the rest is history.
Yep.
We need
Yep.
some
Yep.
sort of structure similar to what is available in North America to allow guys to get in at the grassroots level and learn, and develop skills through that production company structure, and then move on to artists. I think it's some guys have had different ideas. We won't mention some of those crash and
Yeah.
burn ones, but I think guys like yourself,
Right.
and I keep mentioning, yourself, Sean, I think have a lot to say that people really should be sitting down with a notepad and taking some notes, because
And that there's this one guy. There's this one guy that I think that we haven't paid homage to in the Caribbean and in Trinidad that helped a lot of us um, West Indian and Trinidad artists. His name is Frank Agar.
yeah, shout
We
out to
call him
Frank.
Skipper.
Yeah, shout out
Yeah,
to Frank.
he is a person responsible for myself, for Sean, for a lot of the guys, for Brizza and all these guys. We came up under him, and he's like a wealth of knowledge that he doesn't play like he's selfish with it. He
Hmm.
always will give it to you. You
Yep.
know, so that's somebody I think that also we could also incorporate in that because he has the experience and he has the knowledge to go along with it.
Absolutely. So we're calling on in this. This is amazing for like the last learn from the pros. I hope everybody watching. I hope you share this. But let's begin to rally. Let's if you got to write a letter to your member of parliament, to your politicians. I know in Jamaica we have order of distinction. I don't know if you guys have that in Trinidad, but somebody
Yeah.
like Frank should be recognized for his contribution, because if you think about it, and when we talk about Jamaica, you talk about people like John Swaby.
Right.
These guys who really should be recognized for their contribution to the music, because without the technical production services, there is no Sumfest, there is no Trinidad Carnival, there is no Sunsplash without people like John Swaby, without these people who have made significant contributions to our industry. And it's really the platform that us younger guys now are able to stand on and be able to. It's funny, I was telling somebody the other day that when I just moved to Canada and got into freelancing, people were amazed at the knowledge I had, because as far as they're concerned in their mind, I come from Jamaica. Some of them probably
Right.
think we live in tree houses and don't have cable, but you know what I mean. And the only reason why I was as advanced was because of working with people like Wayne Holong and John Swaby and these guys who have brought incredible technology to the Caribbean. And I'm sure it's the same case with Trinidad. When I look at
Yeah.
what Renta Amp brings to the table, and of course they're kind of who whenever I have to go with the artists that I work for, we suggest strongly
Yeah.
that Rentamp is the company handling our production. The music and the festivals and the culture wouldn't be where it is, and I say that unequivocally, that it wouldn't be where it is without these people, without people
Yeah.
like Frank and John Swaby and there's a host of others. So I
You know.
think it's time now that we begin to rally our governments, our ministries of arts and culture, that they start to really, because we do it with artists, right? And they're out in the
Right.
open, artists get order of distinction all the time, but what
Yeah.
about the people who make that possible? And I think if that's the one thing to come out of this entire series of Learn from the Pros, I'm pretty excited about this conversation, about where we're at with this now. I think it's huge for our culture. I think having younger guys, having somebody like yourself to look up to and dream and know that
Mhm.
it's possible to come from an island in the Caribbean and go work for Prince,
Yeah.
and be Prince's engineer. That's inspiring to me. So I hope for those watching it inspires them. And that's what we seek to do with this program, Learn from the Pros, is just to really inspire people to that greatness is possible and that you can do it, but you got to do it the right way, right? You gotta
Yeah.
you gotta be committed to learning, like
Yeah.
Marlon talked about. Get knowledge, get as much knowledge as you can, and go do the best that you can do. Be the best that you can be once you get that opportunity. I like to mention. I like the phrase that says there's no such thing as luck, but simply the intersection of preparation and opportunity. So
Right.
a lot of times we get opportunities, but we're not prepared, so they pass us by, right? So if there's anything I can encourage anybody watching, like Marlon said earlier, just get as prepared as possible. Learn as much as you can. Take this time while we're still on lockdown and no events are happening to get better. Don't waste this time.
Yeah.
Between, I don't think I've spent this much time with my family and this much time learning in years. Like, now my family is sick of me. My kids are like, when is he leaving? They're like, isn't he going on tour? Like, why is he still here? They wake up in the morning and go, oh, he's still here.
He's
You
still
know what I
here.
mean? But definitely, I want to encourage people. Don't waste this time. Get get as much learning and knowledge as you can, and hopefully, once this thing blows over, we can do some stuff back home and do some seminars
Yep.
and teach
Yep.
people some things. But man, I wanna say a huge thank you for taking time out to do this. I appreciate it. I always love talking to experienced people. I tell people all the time that I learn more doing these interviews because I get to do all of them, right? So I
Right.
learn the
Right.
most, and it's most
Yeah.
beneficial to me. And I've learned a lot from our conversation. So thank you again, Marlon. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure, man. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
And I want to thank everybody for watching. Thank you for supporting. We will be back with Learn from the Pros. It's a break. But definitely join our community, patreon.com/Jason Reynolds Pro Audio. Even if you subscribe to the community level, which is $5 a month, you can be a part of our community. Like I said, we're going to do a lot of Zoom hangouts. That's what we're transitioning to. Creating content is a lot of work, and so we're just trying to transition to something more worthwhile for those who have subscribed, so that they can get direct access to people like Marlon. We do some Zoom Hangouts where you can interact with people directly rather than being in the chat on YouTube. So head over to that site, patreon.com/Jason Reynolds Pro Audio. Check it out and see if there's something that fits for you from a subscription standpoint. And we look forward to hanging with you guys soon. Take care.